But yeah,
Yeah, so when you're just like we get started and but what I love too is I think it's just so much more natural when it's like, oh, have we started? I don't know. Here we go.
totally.
But
And
it's so important because even so I made a friend. Sorry, I haven't even done an intro. I'm just talking. We'll get back to it. But I made a friend weirdly at the Texas State PTA conference
mhm.
Sunday morning. My president had left. There was one thing that I wanted to do, but I was like, eh. So my son and I went to the hotel's pool and I met a man and his two kids because his wife was actually not playing hooky and was actually at things. So we got to hang out and he was like, wait, what's perinatal mental health? Like he's a nurse, so
Mhm.
he knows, but he's like, but like, what is that? And it's
Mhm.
just so interesting how many times he kept saying, oh, I didn't know. Well, no, what am I? His wife had postpartum. Like, well, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know what to do. And then and it's just wild how many times we have these conversations and people we don't know because we're not taught. We don't talk about it. And so to bring it back around, I'm so glad to have you here on the Perinatal Podcast so we can talk about it now and people can know what we're talking about.
I'm glad too. And I love that you were chatting with a man and a dad who obviously cares about the women in his life, whether they're his patients or family or spouse. And we've got to be doing more of that. So love that
Yes.
story.
It is great. It's so great to see people, non-birthing people, men, partners being like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is going on? Because as much like we don't know about it ourselves, but then to have to watch a loved one and a partner having some of these shifts and what's going on and how can I help you? But I want to be supportive, but I want to be curious and not judgmental, but I don't know what I'm talking about and I don't want to be what is the word
Overstep.
like I don't want to accuse you of anything, but
Yeah.
also like
Hmm.
things feel off.
It's hard. It's hard because you don't want to say, hey, I've noticed you've been different. And we all know that when you tell a woman to relax, she's not going to relax. She's going to get mad at you. But it often comes with good intentions. And it is a delicate balance of saying, I notice you're maybe a little different, or how can I help without being patronizing. But there
Yes.
is a way to do that. And I encourage people to say something if they
Yes.
notice something about the woman in their lives.
With curiosity and gentle energy. I think
Mhm.
that's a great video. But what we're going to get there. First, I would love to know. So, JD to LCSW. Walk me through that journey.
So it sounds incompatible, but it's not because I've always wanted to help women and make a difference and contribute
Mhm.
to a better world.
Mhm.
And
Actually, one of
I,
my very favorite professors in grad school, same, started as a
right,
JD,
no,
got her.
totally.
So
I
for
think
me,
a
I was
lot
like,
of
one plus one equals two. Go ahead.
I think a lot of mental health professionals feel that way. A lot of lawyers feel that way too. And I took a reproductive rights and law class. And so I thought, okay, in college, I have to go to law school and do it that way. I got to law school. I didn't like it. So I also pursued my master's in social work and I did both in 4 years. And I was very dedicated to supporting women always in whatever profession I could. And then I worked as a lawyer for many years and in law firms. But becoming a mom myself really made me think about how much support women in the workplace, mothers in the workplace, mothers in general needed. And I decided to shift my own career to focus specifically on mental health, particularly maternal mental health, but really mental health for women in all kinds of life transitions.
It's so interesting because as a mental health professional, I see, and also obviously we talked a minute ago, we'll reiterate here, millennial 40-year-old team 85 women, the true crime of it all. I hear like even the Menendez trial, like oh, are we going here in the show? I guess we are.
We
Like
can go.
to hear the things that happened in the 90s and to hear how that went, and of course, no one espouses the virtues of murder, let's be so clear, but what allegedly or they've admitted to happening, and you see it through this lens now. Of course, obviously, we were in elementary school when this is going on, and now I'm 40, so there's that as a parent. But the way that people approach that from a legal setting
Yeah.
in the 90s, and certainly the optics of it, them sitting courtside at a Knick game and all of that, but to now to being like, if only we could have a little bit more empathy, certainly, but just
Compassion.
curiosity of like, how did we get to
Mhm.
this place? And how are things? So I'm excited to hear that there are more people in law who are wanting to hear about like, what can we do that's going to help this person to live a more fruitful or a different life, even if the answer is still prison or whatever it might be, but in a way that is met there. And then also certainly vice versa. Us, we using our voices to advocate and speak out and talk about reforming certain systems and practices in the government and politics and all of that.
Yeah. And also just the media of it all, too. I recently read a book that I would love to recommend. I think
Hmm.
your audience would love it. It's called Girl on Girl by Sophie Gilbert. And it's all about this Y2K pop culture moment and the way that we all treated peers like Britney Spears
Oh,
and Lindsay Lohan. And I, for one, I mean, I was like, I don't like Britney. And now I think, I'm so sorry, Britney. You know, you were going through a really hard time.
oh my
And the
gosh.
way that we don't bring that compassion to media, to, of course, systems like the social justice and legal system, we need to do a better job. So here we
Yes,
are.
I one of my favorite episodes of Las Culturistas, Bowen with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang, was the Tina Fey episode, and she talks about how hard that was her word was hard. We were so hard. Like
So
you'd have a woman on, and instead of her talking about her project or whatever it is that she's there to talk about, we're talking about a panty slip
I
shot
know, and
or
also at a teenager, they were so young.
Jessica
It's
Simpson being
really
a virgin. Like, why are we talking about this? Howard
Mhm.
Stern talking about Anna Nicole Smith's weight, the Tyra Banks. I go on Tyra Banks way too much on this show and daily in my sessions because people are like, I can't understand why they can't get over some of these body issues. And I was like,
That's how
because
we
Tyra
grew up.
Banks told a size 4 that she was brave for being so fat on national television in the aughts. Like, how are we supposed to look at ourselves but that way? Like,
I know, I know. But I don't think it's too late
it is
to
not.
do better.
Yes.
And I think that millennials are raising their kids with this sort of compassionate
Yes.
lens. And I think we all should be. So
Well, I'll put
let's
that.
start them.
It's Girl on Girl. Who was the author of that?
Sophie Gilbert. It's
Okay.
really an excellent book.
I will put that in the show notes. So anybody who wants to hop on that, I'm definitely going to have to look at that because that is really a source of discussion for a lot of things is again, how can we meet people with empathy and avoid competition and mean girling and just show up and be in the space. That is not the way that our generation was raised. It was on one side very Barbie can be anything, so we have to be everything and we can and must achieve in that vibe, but it also a lot of it did come at a competition
Yeah.
energy. Like tear them down so you're alone at the
Mhm.
top. Whereas it's like, hey, send the ladder back down or the elevator back down for other people or bring them with you now. And I like this energy. I'm excited to read that book.
Good. I'm excited too.
Yeah, very much so. And it's that kind of energy and talking about it's been nice. We've talked about how people aren't really talking about postpartum depression, and they are now. Or I remember when Brooke Shields came out and it was met with so much criticism, and we didn't talk about fertility. And now we're talking about fertility a little more, and it's become more, become less taboo. Of course, for me, obviously, this is my profession, so I have no problem talking about it. But just generally speaking, people are more open to that. And so then now here we are we've swung the pendulum. We're moving into the millennial menopause of it all, which I think is such a great thing. Like, tell me about what inspired you to write this book.
Sure. So you're absolutely right. I think, we're not perfect, but I do think that millennials have done a good job about normalizing previously stigmatized topics like maternal mental health, like fertility struggles, like motherhood struggles, and the
Mhm.
weight of it all, right? So as we age, of course, we are going to be encountering menopause soon enough. And I, like you, am a social worker and very passionate and educated in perinatal mental health. I'm a mom of two young kids and I just turned 40 and I realized that I knew nothing about menopause. So I thought, is it just me? Did I miss that day, that week in bio? And turned out it was definitely not just me, that most doctors and medical providers get very little, if any, training in menopause, and that it can impact our whole lives, our health from inside out, and of course, our future, how we're going to live the rest of our lives post menopause. So
Mhm.
I wrote an article about it. It turned into an opportunity to write a book. And here we are. We have Millennial Menopause, preparing for perimenopause, menopause, and life's next period, my book.
I'm seriously so I was so excited when I heard about it and having the opportunity to have you on the show. First of all, I just love the hot pink. It just makes me so happy.
Thank you.
I love the nice bright hello, here we are.
Right.
And the word menopause being so boldly put
Mhm.
out. Just they're not cuss words. They're not taboo.
Right.
Let's The more that we don't operate in secret, the more we understand things, the less we're afraid of things, and we're
Exactly.
able to navigate them in better ways.
Exactly. It's been interesting to see people's reactions when I say, oh, I wrote a book about menopause. Sometimes I'll toy with it and I'll say, I wrote a book about women's health. And then they're very curious. Oh, tell me more. And then menopause people get scared. And I think that's still reflective of ageism, sexism. But if you just remind them that menopause is a phase of life, much like adolescence, sure, there can be negative connotations or symptoms that we're navigating, but it's normal. It's life. It's aging. Aging is a privilege. So let's talk openly about it.
Yes, interestingly enough, my spouse and I were watching Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley, and they had Cheech and Chong on, and Chong was talking about um, the privilege of getting older, and the interviewer was like, "What about the aches and pains?" And he said again, like, "Better than the alternative."
Right.
And what about taking that time for ourselves to explore that, and then to see life is change, and that is scary, which is why therapists have jobs a lot of the time, and we holding space for, again, it's not forced positivity, it's
No.
at all. And I think that sometimes, actually, interestingly enough, my spouse, bless him, who listens to this show, one night we were talking, I said something about like, well, as long as I'm not doing forced positivity, or I don't know what it was about, and he was like, I don't understand this. You say that a lot, but I like to be optimistic. And I said, "Oh, honey, no, no, no. Thank you for bringing this up, because now we're going to get on the same page of we're naming it, we're owning it, we're figuring out what's going on, we're making anxiety our friend, we're learning what changes can we do, what can we participate in a different way that moves us forward where it is." And then having done that work, we're avoiding the forced positivity of trauma Olympics and comparison, and perspective is certainly important, but it's not just like, oh, well, that's what it is and everything's fine and it could be worse because I could be dead. And it's like, yes,
Right.
it's a great place to start. And what else are we doing? How are we being intentional about finding out how we're going to navigate this,
Yeah.
and not just saying that? So it's all of
It's
those things
all
at
good.
once.
Right. But I do think optimism is a nice term because it's
Yes,
not forced positivity. I think for me, at
not the
least,
same.
optimism connotes a sort of curiosity on, okay, well,
Hmm.
how can I make this a better experience for myself? And I like that because again, I think knowledge is power and it might not be easy breezy, whatever the transition that you're going through is. But if you are equipped to navigate it with the right resources and the right attitude, I
Hmm.
think you're setting yourself up for success.
So I literally just wrote that down because I am going to infuse that in so many things.
Good.
Optimism connotes curiosity. So I end this show with "Be curious, not judgmental" from Ted Lasso, um, because I really think that we could all do so much better if we just started with curiosity versus
Yeah.
immediately. And I hold space. Again, we grew up in a girl on girl energy.
Mm.
Our first thought is, she shouldn't be wearing that. You shouldn't be doing this. Da 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 da. That is like ingrained in a child from the aughts, in a teen from the aughts, in a cult. Like that is what we do. How do we start changing that? But I really love this too, the difference between forced positivity and optimism, and articulating that, but how that optimism connotes curiosity. I mean, that is so gorgeous. And I like, you've just shifted, or I've got a new saying now.
I love that. Good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really important place for us to be. And again, acknowledging the pains and the aches or the stressors or the changes, but also, and what does that look like? And not fighting our bodies. That's such a huge thing these days of,
Right.
oh, that's what this is. And we're allowed to not love whatever
Exactly.
that changes. We can wish that we had it back. And also, our body's trying to protect us in this stage and age.
Mhm. That's how I approached the book because I was curious. I'm like, what's about to happen? Where do I need to go for information? And throughout the book, I don't sugarcoat it. There's a long list of potential symptoms, which I want to reiterate. And I know that you've talked about perimenopause before. Not every woman experiences any or all of the symptoms, right? But some
Sure.
women do. And for some women, it can be really difficult.
Hmm.
But help is available. And that's what I wanted to convey. And I convey how you can find that help, whether it's on social media, in social platforms, from telehealth companies, from local providers. Everyone is going to approach it differently, but you're not alone in it. And I think having that reinforcement that this is a universal issue is helpful.
Normalizing. I mean, literally, so I am on the weeks that I don't do an interview, I do. I'm so lucky. I have our listeners will write in their own stories, and it literally talks about normalizing and validating. That's the tagline when I post it on my platforms is many episodes we're normalizing and validating each other because I think that's the other thing too. When you feel like you're doing it alone, you feel wrong, you feel like you need to hide something, you're afraid to ask questions, so then you're just guessing, and then it can be so counterproductive when we're out here talking about it, when we're validating, when we're normalizing. Oh, you have that too. Oh, I have that too. Oh, that's very common. Oh, you don't have that. Well, that's fine.
Right.
All of those spaces. It's so very helpful and it's so great to have that. I certainly don't want to give it all away, but I had a couple of things from the book that I wanted to kind of jump into a little more, give people a little appetizer, if you will. I'd love for you if you could kind of talking about recognizing that overlap. We've got this is how I felt in postpartum. This is how I felt while I was pregnant. How do we recognize, or even just some people have really strong symptoms during their cycle, whatever that looks like. If you have an IUD, you can sometimes still recognize a cycle, or if you don't have any birth control, if you're having a cycle, whatever your cycle looks like, sometimes people even have that. How do we recognize some of the difference in distinguishing between some symptoms that we've had in the past and kind of what the early signs of perimenopause look like?
Sure. So, as a clinician, I like to treat the symptoms, not necessarily the diagnosis. But
Preach on it.
I do think it's important to have an awareness that perimenopause might be upon us. And unfortunately, a lot of healthcare providers don't acknowledge that because they haven't had the training. It's not because they're out to get you or anything like that, but they're uneducated. And a lot of doctors and providers will say things like, well, you're just postpartum. I'm not a fan of that because,
Mm,
first of all, what does that even mean? And secondly, if you're also perimenopausal, which many women who are mothers now are in that perimenopause phase because they're having kids later in life,
right?
if you are perimenopausal, the treatment options might be different and they might be more in line with hormone therapy. Now,
Hmm.
the symptoms in general can look a lot alike.
Hmm.
And it can be midsection weight gain, trouble sleeping, yet fatigue, not feeling like yourself in your own body, irritable, teary, swollen breasts. There's a wide variety of symptoms, hair loss, all the things, right?
Right, right.
And you really could be simultaneously postpartum and perimenopausal. But the thing to note is what is making you feel better and how can you access what you need?
Mm,
So that for both postpartum and perimenopause can include social connection, getting outside, getting proper nutrients, getting good sleep. I mean, those are just always recommended strategies, talk therapy, CBT, etc. And then medication, which can come in the form of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, SSRIs, or hormone therapy, which we tend to still have a stigma around because of the study that came out in 2002, but that interpretation of that study has been mostly debunked and it's usually safe and effective.
hmm.
And women should at least know about it so that they know that it's an option to help them feel better.
Can you go into more? Because I'm not sure if all the listeners are going to be familiar with that study, and I think it's important that we do talk about it's so, I mean, it's so hard today.
Yeah.
We'll come back to 2002, but it's so hard today because if you want to believe something, or if you do believe something and you want to find corroboration, you can find that on the internet.
Yes.
And so it's so hard to to know kind of where to go and what to look for and what is the thing that makes the most sense. And so I just wanted to say that before we even got into this, because I know every one of us kind of we tighten up a little bit when we talk about it makes me so frustrated when people are like, oh, I did the research. And I'm like, you mean you Googled something? That's not the
Right.
same thing.
Right. And what is your source? Is it AI that's generating based on what people are feeding it? Is it, someone on social media who doesn't have any credentials? It's definitely tricky out there. I would say that the Menopause Society is the preeminent professional organization in this space, and they have a lot of great resources and guidelines, even for a non-provider. So the layperson can go. They have free webinars, podcasts, guides, things like that. And I definitely would check it out. And sometimes even bring some of their materials to your doctor's appointment because, again, they haven't been trained and may not know.
Hmm.
I would also say that ACOG, it's the organization for gynecologists, and other women's health organizations are where I personally would go for science-backed evidence. Now, the study that came out was science backed. It was sponsored or run by the Women's Health Initiative, which is a government entity, and it was, of course, meant to research this underfunded area of women's health. So it's not that it was a bad actor involved in this study or someone who didn't know what they were talking about, but for a variety of reasons, it got misinterpreted and the media blew it out of proportion. And basically, from this study in 2002, which some of our moms were impacted by, we got the impression that hormone therapy was dangerous and would cause breast cancer and or blood clots or other cardiovascular issues. Those risks are not really accurate. Every woman, again, is different, but in general, hormone therapy is safe and effective. It's considered the gold standard of care.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate that in 2025, when I told people I wrote this book, the main question I would get was still, isn't hormone therapy dangerous? And the problem with that is that so many women are missing out on treatment for their symptoms that can really be life-saving in many ways.
Yeah. That's interesting to hear that you're still hearing those questions. I mean, it's simultaneously, as a person in the profession, I'm a little shocked to hear it, but I can also, if I take a step outside of that, I'm like, well, I'm sure because people heard it, put it in their brain, put it in a bookmark. I'm never doing that and moved on. And now to hear it coming again, it's like, whoa, hey, whoa, no, we don't do that. And it's like,
Mhm.
actually,
Right.
more recently we've learned and so on. So that's a really interesting hurdle for people to have to navigate jumping over or asking those questions. And that's the thing too, is to be able to go in and ask. I've had clients or just friends even who have questions about things that they're trying or want to try, but they don't want to bother their doctor. I mean, I love a my chart moment, y'all. Get up in that my send a question. Send the
Yeah.
question. If they're like it's too soon, they're going to say it's too soon. You just started it. We
Mhm.
need at least 7 more days on this drug or whatever the situation is that you're doing. Fine, but if you have some new information, they're not with you. You can say, "Hey, I've been noticing XYZ since the 3 or 4 days I've been taking this. Is that normal? Do I need to hang
Exactly.
out for a couple more minutes? Do I need like
I
people are
know.
afraid to ask, and it's like, that's what my chart's for, whatever
When
your
they're
system is.
conditioned, they don't want to be a bother.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
that's
mhm.
bullshit.
It is bullshit. Thank
It's
you.
bullshit. And if you're made to feel like a bother, find a new provider because that's not what you should be feeling. And again, it's not doctors' fault. They don't have the training, they don't have the time, but you can and should assert yourself and your needs. And it's okay to want reassurance that whatever you're feeling is normal or can be tweaked or whatever question you have to get
Yeah.
that answered.
Because sometimes the answer absolutely is, especially you were talking about SSRI, like there are many mental health medications that
Mhm.
take at least 2 weeks to start noticing any efficacy. So of course, but even
Mhm.
still, if you're recognizing something, your doctor's not going to know that. And you can put that in their notes and their nurse assistant or whoever runs that can pop it by them and they can have a thoughtful response or a hey, sorry about your bad luck, we got to hang in a couple more weeks, or certainly again though. if it's something that feels so unpalatable, we don't have to just keep doing this one thing. But I just really need to be on my soapbox right here. The bullshit of it all, thank you, of just ask the question. You're allowed to ask the question. You're not banging on their door. Just pop it into whatever your electronic health record system is, or certainly call.
Right. Call. I know it's funny. I was thinking as you were talking about my chart, sometimes you can just call.
You
That's
can
okay.
absolutely do, why do we, this is such a like a get like is it like a children should be seen and not heard thing? It's a fuck politeness kind of thing.
Hmm.
That, going back to we were talking about true crime earlier, like what is this thing as women specifically? But I think white coat syndrome has always been a thing anyway, so it
Yeah.
goes against sex and gender and all of that. But it's, well, I don't want to bother. And it's like,
Right. Or I don't have time, right? That's another one
well,
that women are constantly, and it's hard. We
yes,
are crunched for time, but
absolutely.
if we don't prioritize our own health,
Hmm.
things will not end well for us.
Absolutely. That's why I love a my chart because I can do it while I'm grabbing something really quick or popping it in or right between sessions while I'm doing a note, like, oh, da 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 on my laptop. If you feel like, oh, I'm the one moment that I have to call is when they're on lunch, great, my chart or email or what. Again, not everyone has my chart. I don't know if that's proprietary or that's just what I've been very lucky to have most of my stuff in the same thing. So,
Yeah.
and the same system. So be able to ask and yeah, now if you're asking 3 times a day, that's a different thing, right? But if you're 3 days into something, 4 days into something, it's you're allowed to ask.
Yes. Although I would add to that, and to your point about SSRIs and kind of hanging out, maybe, yes, wait on the meds to see how it's going. But if you're anxious enough that you're asking 3 times a day or checking in or all the things and you don't feel good, there's
Something's not
other
right.
tools in our toolbox, right? And so maybe your doctor can provide a referral to a therapist or a group, a support group, whatever it is. So
Yes.
it's a data point, right? What's going on with you? How can we help you?
So every single one of my clients, literally, I was speaking earlier of treat the symptoms, not the diagnosis. Every single one of my clients, I think most of us, not all of us, but many of us could identify with the idea of needing different ideas for organization or staying on track or whatever. Every single one of my new clients gets the Eisenhower matrix, which talks about urgency and importance. They get the 5 minute rule, which talks about just get up and try it for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, let's see what happens. And I could go into that more later, but that's not the point of this. The Pomodoro technique, which talks about like chunking out things. And then the last one is a daily mood tracker. And I say this to everyone. I'm like, I have clients who I absolutely am positive I will see until I retire or die. Like, even after I retire, I might still keep seeing them because that's what they do for themselves and they show up. And even those clients are not doing the daily mood tracker. But I send it to them because I want them to see, like, if you're starting to recognize a pattern of behavior or a change in a feeling or more anxiety or whatever that looks like, yeah, data points are so helpful for us as providers. I'm speaking for the medical community, all healthcare. It's so helpful. So even if you're not necessarily writing in every single one of your data points into my chart, if you can track that, then you can say, hey, at 2 o'clock I felt this, and at 5 o'clock I felt this, and in the middle of the night I felt that, and da 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 da. That is so gorgeous for us because then we can say, like, oh, okay, great. So what about this and what about that? There's not a one size fits all. And I think that's the other thing too. Like, oh, well, my doctor said this, so I have to just do it. Nope.
Right. No, yeah. And it's been interesting because that also is my approach as a clinician, as a person, and very much is sort of the thesis of preparing for perimenopause,
Mm.
which is know yourself. If something starts to feel different and you don't like it, it could be hormonal, could be something else, but either way, you deserve support. And if you're at a certain phase of life, it probably is hormonal. So here are the resources that you might need.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love my little our soapbox that we were just on our
Yes, we
journey
are
of
aligned.
it's so it's so important and it is just I don't know. I just want everybody to feel like they're allowed to ask questions and you're allowed to not it's okay not to know, you know?
Right.
And to be able to feel we are not the experts on certain things, first of all, and also as you've said many times, like maybe your provider also isn't the expert on it
Right.
either. But at least being able to ask questions and starting there is definitely so very helpful. So I wanted to ask you too, like what are some things that you talk about with people about kind of what that looks like for these hormonal shifts? How are we taking care of ourselves? How are we having that self-awareness? Because it has to start with the self-awareness before we can talk about the interpersonal pieces. the emotional balance, self-care? What are some things that you've been noticing as you were working on this book?
Yeah, it's been really amazing for me to learn and to see it play out among my clients and friends and self. And I think women, as much as they've been conditioned to not ask questions, we're also conditioned to kind of suck it up and say, well, I am in my 40s. Of course, I'm tired all the time. Of course, I'm ragey most of the time at home. And it's like, wait a minute, maybe we don't have to be. Maybe there's something going on here. And often I see that with my clients who are in therapy with me, and I also have seen them for many years through postpartum issues, and they're coming to me with sort of new emotions that are reminiscent of previous mood symptoms, but a little bit different. And for the ones that I've been seeing, I see a lot of rage and irritability, this feeling of out of control, feeling like a monster is taking over. You rationally know you don't want to be yelling at your child or your husband, but you can't kind of help it. A lot of sleep issues, which of course exacerbate everything because sleep is, medicine and the best thing ever. And it just feels like they don't recognize themselves and they can't use the coping mechanisms that they have learned to because something just feels off.
Yes. What was working is no longer working, or it's not hitting the same as it has in the past, which I want to hold a little space too. It's so frustrating when you've done this beautiful work and you've been in therapy. And I obviously am super biased, but I think everyone, please go get a therapist if you don't have one already. But you've been doing this gorgeous work and you've got your toolbox and it's all nicely sorted and pretty neat and it mostly makes sense and we're feeling pretty good about it. And then all of a sudden, it's not working anymore.
Right. And that can feel really scary and lonely.
Yeah.
And because we don't even have the language around perimenopause or mood issues or midlife care, even those words can be triggering to people. It's very isolating. And it's been a true privilege to be able to educate my clients to say, hey, this is happening to you. You don't have to suffer through this. You're not alone. And it's similar to my postpartum or perinatal clients when I explain to them that up to 1 in 5 women has a PMAD, perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. Just knowing that can make such a difference because they feel like they're not alone and they also realize that help is available.
So much about just full stop having a body,
Yeah.
period. Full stop. Having a body is hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say like, and having a woman's body is hard, but I'm just saying like, and then we go into the fertility, the struggles, the pregnancy loss, the pregnancy, the postpartum, all of that. It is all, none
It's
of
a
it is right.
lot.
It's a lot. And none of it, I feel like, gosh, I just feel like there's, and I don't know where the message comes from. And I don't even really know how to articulate this in some like, pithy and concise way, which no one's ever accused me of being pithy anyway. But it's so hard anyway. And then we think it's just us. And I talked about it earlier. And then we think so we just have to suck it up and get over it. And we're doing it wrong and there's something wrong. And it is. It's like, it's not just you. I myself, going to talk about C-sections, unplanned C-sections. So if you need to hop on over for 30 seconds or so, go ahead. But, my water broke just after midnight on my due date. You want to talk? I was like, oh, look at this. It took me forever to get and stay pregnant, but like, I'm gonna pop this baby out. Like, I didn't have anything to eat before I went to the hospital because I was sure he was going to be there at 7 a.m. holding my baby. And then, long story short, born after 7 p.m. on an unplanned C-section. And I think about that all the time. Like, I'm
Mhm.
broken. I wouldn't, I wouldn't have survived in the 1800s. Or my whole job as a woman is to make babies and pop out babies. And that did, like, that, as much as I absolutely don't believe that, I do not believe that. I also know that there are people certainly that do, and that there is some sort of, I don't know, energy around that. And to be in this space as well, like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I have to stay young. I have to stay healthy. I have to stay thin. I have to say this, like you were talking about the mid section weight gain or hair fall. I have to have the gorgeous locks of hair. Like, And if I'm not doing that, I am failing as a human and as a woman and as a mother and it's like, hey,
Mhm.
maybe not.
Right. We're all trying our best. And you're right. I think some people still do have negative connotations around C-sections or aging. I mean, certainly they do.
Oh, ageism is literally a thing, so we know that to be true.
Right. And even in kind of a positive light, when we use terms like anti-aging skincare, it gives me pause, certainly now, to be
Yes.
like, well,
Well,
why are we so anti-aging? So,
I mean, genuinely, that by definition, you're saying we're trying to stop something that's happening now. Hydration, moisturizing, like that's not, I love that. I was like I said, I was in the desert recently and talk about some dry lips and my everything, the cake of the dust all over me and like, sand. Yes, hydration is key, but also not for the sake of not allowing yourself to look 40. But man, we are not
no, we're not
allowed.
there as a
Oh my
culture.
goodness. I hadn't thought of that before. Like even something as like seemingly innocuous as anti-aging face moisturizer,
Mhm.
but in the messaging itself.
Right. And I get it. Like, it's hard to change. Even if we want to be super body positive, it could still feel frustrating to be like, my pants don't fit anymore. And it was nice when I looked like that. I felt more confident, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But I will say again, the alternative is a lot worse. And if you're enjoying your life, then why are you trying to force your appearance back to what it looked like several years ago? You aren't the same person that you were.
I had a guest on Deb Benfield, and her handle is Aging Body Liberation. That's what we talked about, and she actually just written a book as well. I love that I have so many authors on this show. It's like tell me
Yeah, that's
everything.
awesome.
And she talked about that as well of like our bodies start to shift in these ways because they are guiding us through this season of our lives. And us fighting against that in so many ways is so unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I do understand the industry standards of Hollywood. And, if anybody from our era knows First Wives Club, the babe district attorney driving Miss Daisy of it all.
Mhm.
And we're trying to fight the district attorney as long as we can. And we definitely can't get to driving Miss Daisy, heaven forbid. But there's a reason why we're gaining weight. There's a reason why our midsections look different. And if we can maybe start in that space of like body neutrality and trying to start with the language around that, allowing space for the frustration that I miss wearing my favorite bathing suit, or I miss wearing those favorite jeans, or I miss whatever it is that you're missing from the 20s and whatever.
Yeah.
But also at the same time saying like, oh, but my body's trying to help me prepare for this era.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And when we navigate it in community, even if we're having individualized experiences, it's just that much more powerful. And we can learn from each other and we can cry together and laugh together and refer. And the girl next to me might prefer certain alternative treatments than I might, but that's okay. And we're talking about it.
This is a random thought that just popped in my mind. Have you thought about, and the answer could be no, and then be like, Meg never mentioned that again, but have you thought about maybe in combination with your book, having some sort of like, not Facebook, because who uses Facebook anymore, but like Facebook group or some sort of like community or where everybody gets together and kind of can share their experiences as they navigate your book and all of this together? Have you thought about anything like that?
Not directly as something I would run, but there are some really amazing communities out there that I've had the pleasure of connecting with. There's
Right.
Hot Paws Health, which is basically a baby list for midlife. And here's where certain product, what we think of certain products, certain providers, certain resources. There's the Fuchsia Tent run by my friend Casey Fleming, and that really focuses on workplace and midlife. So there are already so many amazing resources. I will say that as millennials are entering this space, there might be room for more of a millennial focus. So maybe you and I will talk more.
I was going to say, actually, I might talk about
Yeah.
that. So you said, I'll put these in the show notes. So you said it's called Hot Paws Health.
Yes.
Great. And then the
And
Future
the
10.
fuchsia tent, which we
Perfect.
love fuchsia. So
I was going to say, right? I love it so much. Yeah, because that again, just finding those spaces. And again, of course, the obvious disclaimer of be careful into what waters you wade, my friends, because not everyone is out there. Some people, girl on girl, are still very much there, and some people do build themselves up by tearing people down, and you might think it's a good space. But if it feels like someone's tearing you down, I do encourage you to ask that question.
Yes. And also, if it's a specific medical issue that you need help with, please go to a licensed medical provider. It's
Yes.
really wild what I see some questions on Facebook or whatever it is. And I understand, like we were saying before, it can feel hard to reach a provider,
Mhm.
but the internet is not going to properly diagnose you. Please, please, please go to an actual educated
Yes.
and trained specialist.
Yes. Normalization, emotional support, and even ideas. Hey, I tried XYZ. Make sure you go talk to maybe you could ask your doctor about that is not the same as
Right.
this is the only one way and everybody needs to do this and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
certainly
Be
we want to be able to
cautious
share.
about this works for everyone. That's a little bit of a red flag for me.
Yes, trading information versus the one thing, because we all know
Descriptive.
there's just not the one thing, and we are all there's that balance between normalizing and everyone experiences this in their own ways, and this is the only thing that's going to work. Oh, but yeah, and so speaking kind of that, so we already talked about some of like these online systems. How do we build that support system insofar as some of the more like on the less on the meso macro level, but that micro level? How are we like what are the things that you're noticing have been really helpful for people? And again, I saw this in the note, like support squad. What does that look like?
So again, talk about it. And if you're not, you and I are obviously very open. Um, but not everyone is, and that's okay. And you don't have to say, "Hey, my period was a bloody murder scene last night." But you can say, "Oh, I read an interesting article," or, make it less personalized, but still part of the conversation. I
Mhm.
read a good book about menopause. What do you think? I definitely think men should be in this conversation. I have a chapter specifically for millennial men because they're right here with us and they live through it. And it's similar to pregnancy and parenting. It might not be their bodies that are experiencing the changes, but they're along for the ride, right? And they should have a basic understanding of what's going on and where to go for resources. I think talking about it with your friends is imperative. And it's, again, doesn't need to be how's your cycle. It could just be how are you feeling? How are you doing? Right? Or I had trouble sleeping last night. Whatever it is, I think that we have to be receptive to other people. I think we have to think about it in the context of the workplace, of our elected officials, of the media we're consuming, and just really be aware that it's nothing to hide and it's not something you have to suffer through.
Yes, absolutely. I what I love to tell people is it's so helpful to have these conversations with people so they have an understanding and a basis of awareness. We can't be a bull in an antique shop through other people's lives. Well, I'm perimenopausal, so
Right.
whatever. I'm screaming at you and I don't care. It's not a hall pass to act ridiculous. It is a space where if you're starting, like you mentioned earlier, like, I'm yelling at my children, I don't know why. Like if a partner or spouse, not in a codependent way, it's not their job to be your minder, but hey, honey, like what's happening? How can I support you?
Mhm.
If they can meet us with empathy and curiosity rather than judgment and aggression, we're not feeding this pattern. And again, it is up to us. Get your therapy, get your medical conversations. Self-awareness is key.
Mhm.
And if we can do it in a space where we're not doing it alone, it can be so helpful. And I love that idea of how do we navigate those conversations with intention,
Mhm.
helping people as much as we have the space to, it's not our job to educate everybody else as well, but like to say, this is normal, this is fine, this is what's happening. I like the support squad. It's
Support
very
squad. And
helpful.
also don't forget your kids. Talk to your kids about sexual health, reproductive health,
Yes.
mental health, all the things, and make it normal and make it something that they're not ashamed about and that they know they can come to you or to a healthcare provider with any questions.
I just want to, oh, I just hit my own desk. I'm going to drive that home. I'm going to repeat that. Really making sure that we are normalizing these conversations for our children. Because I actually do have this really Pollyanna, optimistic view that our children can have it better,
Hmm.
that they can have structure and boundaries and be held accountable while also not just being screamed at, suck it up, rub some dirt on it, get over it. Like having some sort of medium of that, to not be afraid to ask questions about sex. Oh, we don't talk about that. We do talk about it because there's nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of. And then we have fewer STDs and unplanned pregnancies and other issues because we're just talking about
Knowledge
it.
is power.
And
Hmm.
normal knowledge is power. And I just really want, you already said it all right. I just wanted to like, me too. Let me jump in too, because I want to say it as well of education and normalizing all of these things for everybody. I mean, I've got a 4 and a 6-year-old, so I like maybe not quite there yet, but as I continue to march my way towards it, absolutely like, right. And even then, though, even with a 4 and 6-year-old, in the language that makes
It's
sense to
appropriate,
them.
yeah. I also have a 6-year-old, 6 and 9, and
Yes.
I write about this in the book. I told them about the book and they didn't really know much about periods because I didn't get mine, a long story. And then they were very accepting of the book and periods and menstruation stopping at menopause. And the next day, our dog got her period. So I said, look, this is the perfect example.
Oh my
The
gosh.
whole thing. It was just, this is nature. This happens. It's
Yes.
just part of being female.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's just wild to think about. I think it was during quarantine. There was a meme or a, what are they called when it's not a meme because it's a story, but a story going around about this boy who's on a bus and he gave this girl his sweatshirt to tie around
Yeah.
his waist. Oh, I've got older sisters. And
Hmm.
it's like it's
That's what
wild to
we
think
need.
about. Like I remember once I hadn't had my period yet, but I kept like little pads in my purse or in my
Mhm.
backpack in junior high just in case. And at some point, a couple of boys who were a grade older than me, I think it was on the bus also, like had found them and they were just razzing me so hard about it. And it's like, and I'm not coming for y'all. I know your names, but I'm not gonna say them because that was the era. That was
Totally.
perfectly appropriate in keeping. Like, wouldn't it be so great if every person, no matter your biology, your gender identity, was just like, yes, I will hand you a tampon because I'm not afraid of them because there's nothing to be afraid of because you have a body and a uterus and that happened. Like the same as handing somebody a Kleenex because we sneeze. Like,
Exactly. It's just a bodily function. Everyone, sneezes, poops, gets a period. It's fine.
yes, yes, normalizing tooting. Like
Yeah.
all of those things. Yes, absolutely. Well, that's great. I was curious what kind of the last thing about kind of bringing it back into ourselves, about taking care of ourselves. What is the thing that you've kind of recognized as a common theme for embracing the situation, giving ourselves grace,
Mhm.
allowing the change with reflection, kind of the self-compassion piece of everything? What is that in your experience in writing the book and your practice, all of that? What's been the thing, couple of things maybe even that stand out to you the most that have been helpful for people in kind of this shift of mindset?
I am a huge, huge fan of self-compassion. And when I teach it to my clients, I prompt them with, what would you tell a friend?
Oh,
And I think that our conversation around building community, talking to friends about this, even if they're internet friends, is really powerful because you wouldn't tell a friend, suck it up, you're just 40, this is just life. It's no, what's going on? Can I help you? Do you need help finding a provider? I read about XYZ and I think it might be helpful for you. And so do that for yourself. Don't dismiss yourself. Don't tell yourself that this is something you have to endure. You can find help and support. And I think also reminding yourself this is temporary. Perimenopause can last for several years,
sure.
but it's not your new identity. And you can remind yourself that with lifestyle changes, with those community connections, with medication, if that's what you choose to do, you can feel better and you certainly deserve to feel your best.
I think that's so important too of like I'm not bipolar, I have bipolar, I'm not autistic, I have autism.
Mhm.
I'm not fat, I have fat, that kind of thing. But also we've also come back to like normalizing the word fat. But anyway, I like that idea of like you aren't fingernails, you have fingernails. Anyway,
Yeah.
I love this perimenopause is not your new identity.
Hmm.
I do hold space that it does shift some of our default thought processes and emotional responses. Um, And that is something new to navigate, but it is not, as you said, perimenopause is not your new identity. You can and deserve to navigate this in a very meaningful way. I used to teach at the Graduate School of Social Welfare at the University of Kansas, and I had a class once where we talked about this topic, and we could not come up with a true, cogent, like, this is the answer.
Mhm.
Why are we so willing to give other people grace and so stubborn on expecting more, better from ourselves? Because most people you talk to, I've actually asked a client this, many clients this in sessions of
Right.
like, oh, because you're better than they are.
Mhm.
And then they laugh. Of course, I'm a humor-based therapist, if that hasn't become clear by everybody listening to this podcast by now. But they'll say like, "Oh, what would you say to a friend? Oh, da, 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 da. Oh, but you don't need that break because
Right. You don't
you're
deserve.
stronger and better than that person."
Mhm.
Ha! Well, no.
Right.
But
Well,
what
I
is the origin of this?
I think
Why
it
do we
goes
cling to
back
this?
to conditioning, and I primarily
Yes.
work with women, but I do wonder, I mean, the men I know are not as hard on themselves. So I think it's gendered, and I think women are held to a higher standard by society and then in turn hold themselves to that higher standard.
Yep.
Again, BS. So,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I could talk to you for like 3 more hours about this topic. And I just really appreciate it because, again, it is something that we just really aren't, we're not really, excuse me, we're not talking about it. We're not educated on it. I can guarantee you the word menopause, perimenopause never came through in like a biology class or that fifth grade health class that we all had to take that was somewhat of a joke, but also better than nothing. But also, I don't even know if they're doing that in Texas anymore.
I
Don't
don't think so.
don't get me on my
Or
soapbox.
graduate school though, like nothing.
Yeah, right? Like, and even to your point earlier, even some of these healthcare providers, even a gynecologist specifically, may not have the level of training to be able to explore some of these things in the most meaningful way, or in a way that's specific to you, the one listener I'm talking to right now, in your way. And that's okay. That's not a necessarily a slight at them, but it is just a system that has not set us up for success in navigating life as a human with a body.
But it's time for change.
Here
And
we
by
are.
having these conversations, we are contributing to the
We're
change.
here right this very moment. Okay, Lauren, thank you so much. Can you please tell everybody where they can find you? Of course, these links will be in the show notes.
So if you go to millennialmenopause.com, it'll take you to my website. It'll take you to wherever you can buy the book, which is Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, booksellers everywhere. And I'm on Instagram as the counselor, but LAUR for Lauren. So
Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up because I saw that and I was like, I'm
I
so
like puns. Yeah.
I'm so jealous of the people who there's somebody called, I think she's like the distracted therapist or something like that. And I'm so
Mhm.
jealous because that's so clearly the therapist who talks about ADHD. I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
I need to find somebody like I need to find that one little thing, the counselor. I love it so much.
We'll brainstorm later. We'll
Thank
just
you. How very
I,
kind of you to offer to share your intellectual labor with me. Well, thank you again so much. This very important topic. Thank you for putting your intellectual and emotional labor into this project because again, here we are. We're ready to make the change now. So, thank you again for your time and for everyone out there. We'll see you next time on the Perinatal Podcast. And until then, be curious, not judgmental.